Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Blaster Master Zero. In the last part, Area 4, and now for my least favorite place in the game. Looks like from here on out is some man-made sea. This is gonna suck. Sophia doesn't have much underwater mobility, so getting through this is looking pretty impossible. Eve, can you check to see if there's anything in this area that could help with Sophia's underwater mobility problem? Yep, already on it. Just give me another sec here. Got it. Looks like I'm getting a signal from a chip that seems like it could help with getting Sophia through the sea. The chip's in the sea, though. I guess I'll have to dive in there and go fetch it out myself. The waters can get really rough, so please be careful. It's the water level. It has the usual water level stuff. You move slower in water. You can swim in it when you're Jason on its own. Sophia, though, just kind of sinks and there's nothing you can do about it. The really annoying thing is, on your first playthrough, you're actually likely to miss a couple of areas along the way down some sub-dungeons, namely the one that has the map and another item. And that really sucks because that one item can be very helpful. Thankfully, since this is not my first playthrough, I'm going to be able to show you all of these places. The big gimmick otherwise to this place in the platforming side-to-side Sophia stuff is there are currents in the water that constantly push and pull you. You can't fight them at all at this point, so when you're in the Sophia, they're basically there just to guide you to where you need to go. And with Jason, they're there to be obstacles. Nothing more, nothing less. Also, this area has something that happens a couple times in the game. Not a fan of when it happens in any of them. Very obnoxious top of the filters on top of the screen, basically. And the water one on itself isn't too bad. It's with all these fish that it gets really, really annoying. I don't like it. Area 5, though, is one of those areas that I still enjoy despite it being my least favorite area. Because if I'm recalling the equivalent water level from the original game, that was just plain annoying. And I actually can't recall which area that was because it has been years. Coming up here is the big point where you really need to hold one direction if you want to get all the items on the first go through and not on the backtrack back up. We want to hold left from here on out just because the next sub-dungeon is going to be right there, I believe? Yep. Thankfully, they do place a couple of platforms throughout the area that make getting to things more easy. And of course, if you miss it, you can just probably get out of the Sophia and, you know, swim over to it as Jason. But on my first playthrough, I didn't think to do that. And here we get the main gimmick of the top-down sections in Area 5, moving platforms. I mean, I guess they technically used the closest thing they could to a water gimmick in these back in Area 4. But still, like, really? Notable, though, there is a bit of an annoying hitbox thing with the moving platforms, particularly when it's platforms that are moving together like those two just did. When you have two that are moving into each other, like, completely on the same plane, just moving to, like, touch each other on one of the four sides, you want to make sure you don't move to the next one until the light that's indicating what direction the platform is moving stops glowing. Because I've had several occasions where I've fallen into the, like, 1 or 2 pixel gap between the two platforms. I think it happened even a couple times in practice, though I think on the actual recording it didn't. Either way, it's still very annoying. I recommend being very, very careful. Either way, we're on to the boss fight for this particular sub-dungeon, which I believe is just the enemy rush for this world. Yeah, it is. It's a bunch of these enemies we've seen in the areas already. You're gonna get used to seeing this enemy variety. You're gonna see them for more or less the rest of the game. The counter shield is very good against them if you get the perfect counter, but otherwise it's just kind of there. And for beating that, we get the shield mine, a sub-weapon that is just a shield. It prevents projectiles from blocking forward. It's not too useful given that most enemies that shoot projectiles you're probably going to be killing quickly enough with the homing missiles anyway. And the few bosses we have left as the Sophia itself, there's only maybe one I find it truly useful against. And even then, you don't need to use it, it just make sure that the strategy that I use for that fight works. With that, though, we need to move forward, but we can't move forward with the Sophia. We can only head to the actual dungeon in this area as Jason standalone, which kind of sucks, because that's actually a relatively long trek, but thankfully they make sure to calm down on the hazards a bit for the next little bit here. The biggest annoyance in this area when you're Jason alone is probably these fish enemies, just because I swear there are times I feel like they're aiming for me, but other times they just feel like they're going side to side. The currents aren't too much to worry about if you're placing yourself correctly, especially considering Jason can fight the current a bit more than the Sophia can on its own. And the normal little swimming enemies aren't much of anything to fear, really. Now, in the last part, I talked more in depth about Gunvolt out of the games for DLC characters. I figured now I might as well talk about the other one that you have on the PC version to start, Ekoro from Inti Creates' Galgun series. She has a caveat to her gameplay similar to Gunvolt in that she is much better out of tank than she is in tank. In fact, she has double Jason's jumping height. Can float a little bit horizontally by pressing and holding the jump button and then moving left or right. She can call Sophia to herself at will at any time like Gunvolt could. And something I forgot to mention about Gunvolt that she also has, that she's completely immune to fall damage and deaths. Meaning there are a lot of times you can just say, yeah, screw the tank, I'm gonna go walk. In the top-down sections, Ekoro is rather close to Jason, but not really. She has an all-in-one ammo and gun and sub-weapon gauge, just called the heart gauge. She can fire 3 shots in a row outside of the tank, but in the top-down sections, that's expanded to 6. The problem with her 6 arrow shots is that they come from different barrels on her gun. So each one is slightly differently spaced, so you might need to be more centered on an opponent to get all 6 hits in. As for her sub-weapons, first off is the homing shot, which by either holding or rapid tapping the A button, you fire homing bullets that just home in on the nearest enemy that do about the same damage as the normal attack. I think it's very easy to just spam the hell out of it, because I think you get more than 1 shot per notch on the special gauge. Though I think there is a limit to how many can be on screen at a time. Then there's her Angelic Grenade, I think, which is kind of a mixture of the grenade and flash bomb that Jason has with the cost of 1. Targets within its grenade blast radius take the damage as expected, but those outside of it get stunned similarly to the flash grenade sub-weapon that we got for Jason about 2 parts ago now, 3? Also, I'm going out of my way right now to do this very long platform chain, because in order to get the health up for this stage, you need to go very out of your way. Ekoro's next sub-weapon is the Ekoro Kick. It's basically a rider kick that jumps Ekoro forward, or is it Ekoro? Either way, jumps her forward a number of blocks through enemies, and even over any hazardous terrain, so theoretically I could like skip to that staircase right now with it. Similarly to Gunvolt, though, I think actually every DLC character has this, though. In that same area I mentioned in Area 1 in the starting room, after you get a certain ability later on, there is an island in the center where you found Jewel as Gunvolt. Up there with Ekoro, you can find her final weapon, the Doki Doki Field, which is a very expensive SP weapon that does something similar to one of Jason's later top-down section sub-weapons, where you get to choose about 10 or so targets in free aim and then just do a bunch of damage to them very quickly. It's very powerful, and I think it might even stun them afterwards, but it also only slows down time as opposed to the later weapon, which actually just stops it, period. So if you're not careful, you can still take some stupid hits. Ekoro is an okay character. Honestly, Jason is my preferred way to play this game in general, but I won't deny that each of the DLC characters does have their own benefits and fun. It's just, this is what I prefer. Mind you, whenever there's a lot of playable characters like this in a game for DLC or otherwise, usually the original playstyle is still my favorite. And what I think that often comes down to is the fact that it's just the same game with a slightly different playstyle. It's one thing if it was like Shovel Knight, where each of the different night-based campaigns have a different set of stages and mechanics. But if they were all going through Shovel Knight stages, that'd just be not very interesting at all in my... Oh, Jesus Christ, that poor thing. Huh. Notable, there's actually a hint that's going to happen if you pay attention just to the animation of the whale being a bit different there first off. And also, in like the second room of this particular dungeon, you can find an empty shell of some very crab-shaped monster who might be a thing in a few moments, now that you've seen that. I have no idea why that detail is there, but it's kind of cool, I admit. Also, I'm totally going out of my way here just to get one extra weapon level for the wave beam, because the next little... This area is a bit weird in that you have to go through the main dungeon to get the heart up anyway, or the health up. But when you get to the room where the boss is, there's also no blocks to destroy to get an easy weapon level up, which is just weird. Also, I recommend using the remote mines for this next section because the next boss is more, not vulnerable to those, but definitely more easily hit by it. So, let's see who we got here. Oh, hi. Is that the shadow I saw earlier? The chip signal's coming straight from it. No way. That thing is using the chip? This is bad news. Eve, I gotta take this thing down. What? Eve? Are you alright? Eve is definitely inside Sophia, but it seems the transmission's real bad. I hope nothing happened to her. Damn, of all the times. Please be safe, Eve. This is the Abyssal Predator Hard Shell. Hard Shell can only be hit in the back, though, that very fleshy looking spot on the back. Everything else is armored. It has 3 notable attacks, which are all dependent on what color its eyes are. Between attacks, it'll just move between the grid bits and do different things. It has a straight-up charge attack, which I believe is when its eyes are yellow. When its eyes are blue, it's gonna... or no, green, it's going to fire a bunch of bubbles at you, which will eventually culminate in a bubble shield being projected in the middle of that part of the hallway. But if you spam your wave beam, it dies really quickly. And you can see why the remote mine would be useful for that, because you can just lay traps to do a lot of damage very quickly. But for beating it, we get the dive gear. Move freely underwater by using the jump button. Eve, can you hear me? Jason? Eve, you're safe. Thank goodness. Hey, what's the matter? I could be asking you the same question. The transmission to you was really unstable. I kept calling out to you. Did you not notice? The transmission? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't notice. Hey, I'm just glad that everything is alright. By the way, I got that ship. Heading your way now. Right. Please be careful getting back. Okay? Yeah, I will. And now we need to take the long way to get back to the Sophia. Thankfully, there are water currents here to push us all the way. Hey, that's a dungeon I can't get to now. I'm sad. Again, though, this is one of the rare cases where there is actually another little top-down dungeon to go to after you finish the main area. And you just outright can't get to this one beforehand, just like the one in Area 3, so that's just kind of weird that they do that again. Thankfully, though, now that we have the dive gear, we can just swim with the Sophia by pressing the jump button. And this is me checking to see if she had any dialogue about the transmission. Nah, she didn't. Sophia can now fight the currents while swimming, though you still do get... it is an active fight against it because you are noticeably slower. And it works a little bit like Jason when he's swimming, where... I didn't even mention this. Jason's swimming controls are a little weird. I need to jump up, but in order to keep swimming, you don't hold the jump button, you hold up. You need to do the same here, and it feels a little weird. A little bit clunky. Not entirely sure how I feel about it. Now, in order to actually reach the dungeon, I do believe you need to go all the way around again. Though, I think there is also a way just to head into the previous area and then have Jason swim through the current to this ladder. The big thing is if you do that, you can't take the Sophia any further just because you have to duck that tunnel there. And well, then you can't exactly reach it by just easily destroying that, and this is just better. And this is a darkness dungeon, so you need to make sure you use a flash bomb. This is probably one of the more hard to navigate areas just based off how open it is. There's only one path, I think, that leads to the eggs, and the other ones are just a lot of tedious dead ends. And I get it, it's the point. You're supposed to get a little lost, but, like, yeah, for this kind of style, I don't think it fits too well. It's also a really short area if you know the right way to go. And now it's time for the boss of the area. This is a little bit of a fight. What's the name of this thing again? It looks big, but Gurnahide here is super easy. Spam the wave shot and it dies within seconds. Because the face, the wings, and the body, the back, are all things you can damage. I have never seen that thing attack. I don't know what it does. It is that easy to kill. But for beating it, we get one of the best things in the game, the turret. A sub-weapon that once set, fires bolts in a scattering pattern for a fixed amount of time. Makes for a useful decoy. Later on, there will be enemies who outright home in onto Jason's location, and using that will outright distract them. It'll also distract boss fights if they're outright targeting you, like the Spark Salamander back in Area 4. Bar? 4. That was a little weird pronunciation. The super broken thing about it, even though I don't start using it until later on, is that if you get an enemy right on top of it, they take a lot of damage really quickly. It's super good for later boss fights. Also, this is the thing, you can actually summon the Sophia to any checkpoint if you're there with Jason alone. That is what a lot of the DLC characters gain the ability to do at will, starting from, I think, like the 1.4 patch of the original game. And now we need to head to Area 6, which, well, the pathway was illuminated for us there, just on the map. I think there actually isn't a trophy / achievement on the console versions for summoning Sophia, so make sure you do that at least once. Area 5, I'll admit, despite being my least favorite area in the game just because it's a water level, isn't too bad all the same, because when you're Jason and swimming, the water doesn't impact you too much. I'm just not a fan of the actual moving platform gimmick. I think it's rather uninteresting. And when you're the Sophia, it's just kind of tedious to get around. Thankfully, you can finish this place in one trip, so I don't need to worry about having to head back in there. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 6, well, I think you can count Area 6 time. See you guys then.